I'm August Bennett, 28, and the night I begged my parents for $9,000 to save my son's life, they told me they'd just spent $715,000 on my sister's wedding. I signed the hospital papers alone, praying my little boy would survive without their help. A month later, they invited me to dinner, pretending nothing had happened until the lawyer walked in with my grandfather's final will. What came next shattered every illusion of family we'd ever had. That night, the people who once called me a disappointment finally learned the real cost of their choices, and it started with $9,000. The waiting room was far too quiet for a place built on panic. The clock ticked like it was counting down to something inevitable, each second scraping against the back of my skull. My son, Liam, was somewhere behind those double doors, a thin curtain of sterile white separating me from the only heartbeat that mattered. His small hand had felt so light when the nurse took him away, fingers clutching mine until they slipped apart. I stared at my phone, the last text from my mother still open. "We just spent $715,000 on your sister's wedding, Claire. You should have planned better." $715,000. The number pulsed in my head like a wound that wouldn't close. My sister, Madison, had paraded through a glass ballroom draped in orchids that cost more than my entire house. A string quartet had played as my parents wept with pride, while I stood in the back with Liam, clapping as if we belonged there. Now I sat alone on a cracked vinyl chair, the smell of disinfectant burning in my throat. The surgeon had said the operation would cost $9,000, $9,000 to give my son a chance. Insurance covered most, but not enough. My savings were gone, swallowed by months of medication and hospital visits. When I'd called my parents earlier that morning, I hadn't begged. I'd asked. Just that once. I reminded them how they'd always said family came first. My father's silence had stretched for a long, cold minute before my mother answered for him. "Claire, this isn't our responsibility. You have to learn to manage your own life." Their words had landed heavier than any rejection I'd known. Not because of the money, but because it confirmed something I'd always suspected. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was an inconvenience they tolerated. I signed the consent forms with shaking hands. The nurse gave me that practiced look of pity, the one medical staff wore when they'd seen too many mothers standing exactly where I was. "Will you be the one signing financial responsibility?" she asked. "Yes," I whispered. "Just me." When the doors closed behind her, I pressed my palms together and whispered to no one, "You're going to be okay, Liam. I promise." That night, I drove home to a house that felt smaller than ever. The kitchen light flickered when I turned it on, washing the empty counter in yellow. Liam's cereal bowl still sat in the sink, his little fork balanced on the edge. I should have cleaned it days ago, but somehow I couldn't bring myself to. It felt wrong to erase his fingerprints while he was still fighting. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every word my parents had said, every time they'd reminded me how I'd chosen this life. The single motherhood, the small apartment, the endless stretch of bills. They'd said Madison made smart choices, married a surgeon, lived in a home that looked like a magazine spread. I was the one who had settled. By morning, my phone buzzed again. A message from Madison. "Heard about Liam. Sorry it's tough. Mom says maybe a fundraiser? That could be cute." Cute. I didn't respond. 2 days later, Liam came out of surgery. The doctor said it went well, that he was strong, a fighter. I pressed my forehead against his hand and let the tears fall silently. For the first time in weeks, relief flooded my chest like warmth in winter. When I finally stepped outside the hospital, the city felt louder than before. People laughed, cars honked, life kept moving. I stood there, breathing in the cold, realizing something I hadn't before. I was done waiting for my family to save me. A month passed. Liam's color returned. His laugh filled the apartment again, soft and bright like sunlight through rain. He'd started drawing castles and stars, telling me stories about the heroes who always win. I smiled, even when the hospital bills arrived like small storms. I paid them one by one, each check a reminder of what I'd survived alone. When the invitation came from my parents, I almost threw it away. Family dinner, everyone required to attend. It was printed on cream stationery, the same kind used for wedding menus and holiday announcements. I told myself I wouldn't go. Then I saw Liam sitting on the floor with his crayons, his face lighting up when he asked, "Will Grandma be there?" So I went. Their house looked exactly the same, sprawling, manicured, and cold. The chandelier above the entrance glowed too bright, every surface polished to perfection. Madison swept down the staircase in a designer dress, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Claire," she sang, hugging me like she hadn't ignored my calls for a month. "And look at Liam, he's so big." I smiled politely, guiding Liam toward the table set for 8. My father was at the head, scrolling through his phone. My mother sat beside him, whispering about some charity gala. Halfway through dinner, the doorbell rang. A man in a dark suit stepped in, carrying a leather briefcase. My parents straightened immediately, smiles flickering into place. "Mr. Howard," my father greeted. "We didn't expect you tonight." "I'm sorry for the intrusion," the man said. "I was instructed to deliver this in person. It concerns the estate of Mr. Richard Bennett." "Grandpa." My mother's smile faltered for the first time that evening. "You mean his will?" We thought everything had been handled already. The lawyer opened his folder. "Mr. Bennett made a final amendment before his passing, one that supersedes all previous versions." I felt the room shift, the sudden stillness before a wave. Madison leaned forward, her bracelet clinking softly against her glass. "Well, let's hear it then." The lawyer cleared his throat, reading in that calm, deliberate tone only professionals use. "All assets, totaling $12.4 million, are to be transferred to my great-grandson, Liam Bennett." For a moment, no one breathed. The only sound was the faint hum of the chandelier above us. My mother's knife slipped from her hand, clattering onto her plate. My father blinked, as if he hadn't heard correctly. Madison's mouth opened, then closed again, her smile collapsing. The lawyer continued, "Mr. Bennett specified that these funds are to be held in trust until Liam's 21st birthday, with Claire Bennett as sole guardian and executor." Liam looked up at me confused, his small voice breaking the silence. "Mommy, what does that mean?" I brushed his hair back gently. "It means Grandpa loved you very much." My parents stared at me, disbelief, anger, and something else I couldn't name swirling in their eyes. For years, they'd treated Grandpa like a relic, a man too old-fashioned to matter. I'd been the one who visited him every week, who read to him when his eyesight dimmed, who brought Liam to brighten his days. He'd always said, "Claire, you understand value, not the kind that fits in a bank, but the kind that lives in people." Now I finally understood what he meant. I rose from my chair, steadying myself. The air was thick with unspoken words. I looked at my parents, their faces pale beneath the chandelier's glow. "You thought 9,000 was too much," I said quietly. Grandpa didn't. The lawyer gathered his papers, oblivious to the quiet storm unraveling across the table. Madison pushed her chair back too sharply, her bracelet snapping against her wrist. My mother's lips parted, searching for something to say, but no sound came out. Liam tugged at my sleeve. "Can we go home, Mom?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady now. "We're done here." As we walked out, the echo of our footsteps followed us down the marble hall. The doors closed behind me with a soft thud, the kind of sound that marked an ending and the start of something new. The next morning, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Unknown numbers. Family friends. My mother's assistant. They all wanted the same thing, an explanation. I didn't answer any of them. I just sat on the edge of my bed, watching the light crawl across the carpet, trying to make sense of the night before. Liam was at the kitchen table, stacking his cereal into tiny towers, humming to himself. He didn't understand what $12 million meant, and I didn't want him to. To him, Grandpa had just loved him enough to leave something behind. That was all he needed to know. When I opened my laptop, the first email hit like a bullet. Urgent family discussion. My mother's words, clipped and sharp. She wanted a meeting that afternoon. "We need to clarify this misunderstanding before it escalates," she'd written. Misunderstanding. The word made me laugh, though it came out more like a breathless scoff. Grandpa's signature was on every page of that will. The only thing they misunderstood was that money no longer answered to them. I didn't want to go back, but something in me knew I had to. Not to argue, but to end the part of me that still waited for their approval. Their house looked different in daylight, less grand and more hollow. My father stood in the living room, hands in his pockets, the lawyer's documents spread out on the coffee table. My mother paced near the window, phone pressed to her ear, whispering furiously to someone. Madison sat on the couch, eyes red, though I doubted she'd been crying out of grief. Her husband, Jason, stood behind her, quiet and unreadable, probably calculating what this twist meant for his future plans. "Claire," my father said, his voice calm in that deliberate way he used when he wanted control. "Sit down. We need to talk." I didn't move. "I'm fine standing." He sighed. "This isn't what your grandfather intended. We've been in touch with the estate attorney, and it's possible he was confused. He wasn't well toward the end." I felt something cold rise inside me. He was clear when he signed that amendment. I was there. He asked the lawyer to read every line twice. He knew exactly what he was doing. My mother turned then, lowering her phone. "Claire, listen to us. This isn't about you or Liam. It's about fairness. Your sister spent $715,000 on a wedding," I cut in. "Fairness doesn't seem to have been your concern before." Her jaw tightened. "We took care of you for years. You've had every opportunity. We can't let an entire estate be locked under your name. People will talk. The family's reputation." "Reputation?" I repeated. "You mean the kind you buy with flowers and ballroom lights?" Madison stood abruptly, eyes flashing. "Stop acting like you're the victim, Claire. Grandpa was senile. He probably thought he was leaving something small. You're exploiting him even now." It took everything in me not to laugh. If Grandpa was confused, why did he ask for Liam by name? Why did he write it in his own handwriting on the cover letter? Jason finally spoke, his voice low. "We can challenge it in court." My father nodded slowly. "We're considering that." There it was, the real reason for the meeting. Not family, not reconciliation. They wanted the money back. I leaned forward, resting my palms on the edge of the table. "If you take this to court, everything will come out. Every expense, every transfer, every cent you funneled through your charity accounts. Grandpa knew about all of it. That's why he changed the will." For the first time, my father's face cracked. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Actually," I said, pulling a folded letter from my bag, "I do. It was the one Grandpa had given me a week before he passed, sealed in a plain envelope. He'd written it in his own hand, his words simple but deliberate. Claire, if you're reading this, it means they've finally learned what real value means. Don't let them take it from Liam. This is my way of setting things right." I placed the letter on the table. My mother stared at it as though it might catch fire. Madison's voice trembled. "So you're just going to keep it all? Like some saint who earned her reward?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm going to make sure Liam has a life where he never has to beg for help. A life where love isn't conditional." My father slammed his palm against the table. "You're destroying this family." I met his gaze. "No, I'm just no longer letting you destroy me." When I left, the sky was a sharp, cold blue. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't fear, it was release. Years of trying to earn their respect had dissolved in that one conversation. By the time I reached home, a black sedan was parked near the curb. A man stepped out, Mr. Howard, the estate lawyer. "Miss Bennett," he greeted. "I just wanted to update you. Your grandfather's trust has transferred. The accounts are now active. There's also a letter for you in his handwriting, separate from the one you already have." He handed me a smaller envelope. I thanked him, then watched him leave before opening it. Inside was a single sentence. "There's more than money, Claire. Find the key behind the photograph." I went to the living room, where Grandpa's framed picture of the lake hung on the wall, the same lake where he used to take Liam fishing. When I lifted the frame, something rattled. A small brass key fell into my palm, tarnished with age. It didn't look like it belonged to a safety deposit box. It was older, handmade. On the back, a faint engraving, "Maple Ridge Cabin." Grandpa's old retreat. The one he'd stopped visiting years ago. A chill ran through me. What else had he hidden there? That night, I tucked Liam into bed and sat by his side until his breathing softened. The city outside was quiet, but my thoughts weren't. My parents would fight this, I knew them too well. They wouldn't let the matter rest, not with that kind of money at stake. But now, there was something bigger, something Grandpa had left behind intentionally. Parents would fight this, I knew them too well. They wouldn't let the matter rest, not with that kind of money at stake. But now, there was something bigger, something Grandpa had left behind intentionally. I picked up the key again, running my thumb over the engraving. Whatever waited at that cabin wasn't an accident. He'd wanted me to find it. And if he'd gone to that length, it meant this inheritance wasn't just about wealth. It was about truth. The kind that could rewrite everything my family thought they controlled. The next morning, I packed a small bag, left a note for my neighbor to check on Liam, and drove north toward Maple Ridge. The road narrowed as I left the city behind, the trees growing thicker, the air turning colder. After 2 hours, the sign appeared, Maple Ridge Lake, private property. The cabin stood at the edge of the water, weathered but solid, its porch half covered in leaves. I found the lock under the window, the brass key sliding in perfectly. Inside, dust coated everything, but the air smelled faintly of cedar. On the mantel, a small wooden box sat waiting, its lid carved with the same initials that marked the will, RB. Inside was a flash drive and a single note. If you're reading this, you'll know what to do. They buried the truth under numbers. Show them what honesty costs. I drove back from the cabin with my hands tight on the steering wheel, the flash drive on the seat beside me like a live wire. Whatever was on it had weight, the kind that could crush reputations. Grandpa hadn't trusted anyone else to find it, and now I understood why. By the time I reached home, my phone was lighting up again, messages from unknown numbers. One from my father, "You're making a mistake. Let's talk." I didn't answer. I already knew what his version of talking meant: pressure, manipulation, control. This time, they would hear me on my terms. I powered on my laptop and opened the drive. Inside were hundreds of scanned documents, bank statements, transfers, emails, and donation records tied to fake nonprofits. The numbers were staggering. My parents had been moving Grandpa's assets for years through shell accounts, disguised as family charities. He must have discovered it near the end and used his final will to stop them. At the bottom of the folder, a single video file waited. I clicked play. Grandpa appeared on screen, sitting in the same cabin chair I'd just seen. His voice was calm, steady. "If this reaches you, Claire, then they've tried to twist the truth. I built this family on hard work, not greed. They took what wasn't theirs. You'll find the proof here. Do with it what's right, not what's easy." I watched until the screen went dark, my heartbeat filling the silence. He'd trusted me not just to protect Liam, but to finish what he couldn't. 2 days later, the family gathered again, this time at my parents' house, though the tone was far from cordial. The lawyer, Mr. Howard, stood near the window with his briefcase, clearly uncomfortable. My parents were tense, my mother pacing while my father scrolled through his phone as if pretending control. Madison sat stiffly beside Jason, her jaw clenched. "Claire," my father said when I walked in, "we've consulted our attorneys. If you refuse to release the inheritance, we'll pursue this in court." "You won't have to," I said, placing my laptop on the table. "Because after tonight, there won't be a court case. There'll be an investigation." Madison frowned. "What are you talking about?" I turned the screen toward them and hit play. Grandpa's recorded message filled the room. My mother's face drained of color. My father froze. Every file, every transaction followed, each one showing money rerouted from Grandpa's estate into their personal accounts. When it ended, silence fell heavy. Mr. Howard looked stunned. My mother's voice trembled. "Where did you get that?" "From him," I said. "He left it for me to make sure the truth didn't die with him." My father's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand the damage you're causing." "No," I said quietly. "I understand exactly what you did. You stole from the man who built everything you have. And when he found out, you turned on me because I reminded you of him." Madison's voice broke through the tension. "So, what now? You ruin all of us." "I'm not ruining anyone," I said. "You did that yourselves. But I'm not going to let Liam grow up in a family built on lies." I turned to Mr. Howard. "These files should go to the authorities. I want every fraudulent account shut down and every missing dollar returned to Grandpa's estate." He hesitated only a moment before nodding. Understood. My father slammed his hand against the table. You can't do this. You're destroying your own blood. I already watched you refuse to save mine, I said, my voice steady. That's where blood stopped mattering. The weeks that followed moved fast. The investigation confirmed everything: tax fraud, falsified donations, and illegal transfers. My parents' names filled the headlines, not mine. Madison and Jason tried to distance themselves, but records showed her name on several accounts. Their empire collapsed piece by piece, the same way they'd dismantled everyone else's trust over the years. Through it all, I stayed quiet. I didn't need revenge. The truth had handled that for me. I focused on Liam, his school, his laughter, the new rhythm of peace in our home. For the first time, I wasn't surviving, I was living. One evening, a letter arrived from Mr. Howard. The estate was fully cleared. The trust was secured, untouched, in Liam's name. Grandpa's cabin, too, now legally ours. He'd left a final note inside the file. You've restored what mattered most: integrity. Let the rest go. Months later, I took Liam to the cabin. The lake shimmered under the afternoon sun, calm and endless. He ran ahead, skipping stones across the water. Mom, was Grandpa really here a lot? He asked. All the time, I said. He used to say this place reminded him what's real. Liam looked at the sky, smiling. I think he'd like that we're here now. I nodded, feeling the weight that had followed me for years finally lift. In the distance, I could almost hear Grandpa's voice, that quiet steadiness that had anchored our family long before greed had taken hold. He hadn't just left money. He'd left a lesson. When people show you the cost of their love, believe them. And when they try to make you feel small, remember that strength doesn't shout, it endures.